Vassana Kalo. This is the rainy season. Good evening and a very warm welcome to Beyond the Vision, brought to you by the Buddhist channel. And today we will be discussing on another very important topic in consideration to the rain retreat or the Vassana season. And my most veneration goes to Venerable Mahanuwara Medankara Thera and Professor J.B. Disanayake, who is here with us today. A very good evening to you as well. So talking about the rainy retreat or the Vassana season. Now when we consider the Buddhist culture and tradition, it has been prevailing since 2,600 years back. And this is the 2,601st year we are commemorating for the 2,600 Sri Sambuddhatva Jayanti. And of course, the Buddhist traditions and cultures has been prevailing since years and years. So talking about the traditions and the cultures, first of all, I would like to ask you, Venerable Sir, to give us a brief introduction on how the Buddhist cultures and traditions have been prevailing since history in Sri Lanka.
Well, before I answer you in regards to how traditions and rituals have been, the culture has been going on in Sri Lanka, it is important for us to know, firstly, how the Buddhist culture came to be. So, some minutes ago, I and JB were talking about society. And he was telling me now how society has changed into a consumer society. So with consumerism now caught up in the society, people are more inclined towards consumerism than spiritualism. So now that is a very good example we can take to see how culture is brought about. Now the transformation comes firstly in the mind. It is, as the Buddha said, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. Mind is the forerunner and the leader. So the first step here is the mind, and in the mind, a vision is created as to how things will be, how things ought to be, and how things are managed. Then, what is created in the mind is translated into thoughts, speech, and physical action. Now, whether we see an advertisement or newspaper or books or whatever, all this falls into those three categories: thoughts, speech, and physical action. Now what I'm answering is what is in my mind, and what you are asking me is what is in your mind. So again, it is like that. So therefore, now the Buddhist culture at the very inception, I wouldn't say now, but at the very inception, at the very beginning, was Buddha's mind. We must remember that there was no Buddhist in this world until the ascetic Gautama, the Bodhisattva, became the Buddha. He was the first Buddhist. Then he broadened his area. He spoke to the 5 ascetics, Panchavaggiya Bhikkhu, Pasvaga Mahanun in Sinhala. Now they were not Buddhists either. Then they changed over. Then he spoke to the young man of a wealthy household, Yasakula Putra, the son of a very wealthy family called Yasa. Now he transformed to become a Buddhist. Then there were 30 other friends. Then thereafter, there were the 30 princes, brothers, so who became Buddhists. So like that, you can see that all were non-Buddhists who became Buddhists. Thereafter, when the great elder Arahant Mahinda Thero came to my country, to our country, Sri Lanka, there wasn't a single Buddhist here either. Now, having listened to him, our king, Devanampittissa, became a Buddhist. Then his wife became a Buddhist. The whole country became Buddhists. So you can see that it is the conviction in the mind, it is the mind that takes up a decision as to how a life would be, ought to be, and should be, and how it is run. And based on that, the other areas will come into play. So Buddha's culture, the Buddha's mind, is paramount in love. So I use the word love to show metta, loving kindness. Then his mind is paramount in compassion. Then he is uncompared in wisdom. And he is uncompared in character. If we were to go and talk about his personality, today we will not see an end to our discussion. So this is a person, we are talking of a personality called Buddha, who supersedes all personalities put together in the world of Devas, in the heavens, in the world of Brahmas, in the world of Maras, in the world of humans, and the lesser worlds beyond. And this is through his personal achievement of a supremely enlightened mind and a supremely controlled thought process, words, and physical action. So you will see that the Buddhist culture was based on wisdom, was based on loving kindness, was based on compassion. And when these three are in harmony, working, then you will see that then the criteria of sin and good. The word sin I use because that is mostly known in the world through the biblical terms. Otherwise, we can even say negative karmas. So if you use the word negative karma and positive karma, wholesome energies and unwholesome energies, skillful action and unskillful action, so now there is no room for unskillful actions in Buddhism. So you will see that the Karanyametta Sutta will testify to that. Sakko, you have to be very skillful. Ujucha, you have to be very upright. Sujucha, we have to be extremely brave. So forth and so on and so forth. So as such, the Buddhist culture revolves also on a fear of the wrong and the joy of the right. The shame to do wrong, but the pleasure to do right. It is called Hiriotap. So in this manner, the Buddhist culture is created. So you will see that since it was a very strong culture, even though now the creator, the Buddha, the leader, is no longer alive, the force he set behind it is still rolling it on after 2,601 years. And his disciples, the Arahants, the bhikkhus and the bhikkhunis, the Arahant bhikkhus and the Arahant bhikkhunis. they were no different to the master. They followed the Lord to the letter. So their power and energy and trust in this culture remains. And so were the upasaka upasikas, the devotees, the men and the women who took up to following the Buddha, his teachings, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, the Aryan fellowship. So they gave their lives to follow these principles and practice. So what happens is, what we are seeing is, I would say, is the what we see presently in Sri Lanka or wherever it is, I would say is not the culture that at its peak, but at its decline. But still it goes on because of the heavy thrust and the force of magnitude of the Lord's immense power behind it that takes it on. So in other words, if we take just one of this as loving kindness, we can even say friendliness. You will see that in Buddhist countries, they are very friendly. People are very friendly. And they take things very easily, lightly. Pressure is borne with ease. I have not seen people with mental problems until quite recently, until maybe the last 10, 20 years, until this Sri Lanka gave more importance to a worldly life than a religious life. So since our attitudes have changed, the repercussions are also seen. So this is what I see in this culture. And we can link this to even the Katina. Now the Katina is also a part of this huge culture set forth by the Buddha. But of course it was determined initially not by him, but at the request of the masses. He laid down the culture, the rules and the regulations on so many areas without anyone prompting him. But this one was, of course, prompted by society, but we can talk that later. So this also, young lady, you can take up your topic today as a part of the Buddhist culture, you know.
Is exactly, Venerable Sir. Actually, when we talk about the history of Buddhism, this is the 2601st year after the Sri Sambuddhatva Jayanti that we are celebrating. And talking about the rain retreat or the Vasana season is of great significance. So I would like to ask you, Professor, how did the whole history behind the Vasana season or the rain retreat itself come into effect? I think when we consider way back in history, as Venerable Sir also mentioned, it was the other masters, actually Nikantanada Putra and them, it was their request to Lord Buddha to actually start practicing the rain retreat. So give a brief introduction on as to how the history evolved.
The Venerable Sir said, you see, Buddhism gave us a unique culture, a Buddhist culture, and it has many elements, and one of the elements here are the rituals that we observe from time to time.
Yes.
Now, rain takes place at different times in different parts of the world, in India and Sri Lanka, where we are in the tropical countries. The rain season begins around July, or as you call it, Asal.
Month of Asal, yes.
Yes, so the rain, in fact, for the rain itself, in the month preceding Asal, Poson, we conduct certain rituals called rain-making rituals, the peraharas that are conducted, especially in the Kandy, at the Dalada Maligava, and in certain shrines at Deundara and even Kataragama, we invite the blessings of the Vastavalahaka Devas to give us rain. As a result of that, rain comes at the end of Asala, and there begins the rainy season, the Vastana retreat. So this began in India because Buddha was there, so it all began in India. But because we inherited this culture brought to us by Sage Mahinda, so we kind of follow the same patterns. So today we are at the first month of Vastana here.
Yes.
So what happens in first is the physical reason. You know, when it rains too much, monks can't go on Pindapata. It's raining, it's cumbersome. So Buddha said, better stay in the temple for a while. He also made sure that while you are at the temple, you can take stock of things. So a monk enters the sasana or becomes a monk for a spiritual purpose, for spiritual upliftment. So now this 3 months give the monk a chance to look back and find out whether he has achieved anything, what progress he has made. So he not only stays in the temple, but he takes stock of things, whether he has achieved what he meant to achieve at the beginning. So that way it's a very good, with good purpose. So it's happening right now. So it begins by a chief Dayaka Mahatya or a benefactor going to the temple and offering a piece of white cloth called the Vasisalu, a kind of rain cloth. And you offer it to the monk, chief monk of the temple, and invites him to spend the next 3 months in the rain retreat. And then of course he accepts it, he chants Set Pirit, and then he is also offered betel, which is considered very culturally important. So thus begins the Vastana season, and it goes for 3 months.
Exactly, sir. Actually, I would like to ask you, Venerable Sir, now, what are the rules? Now, I think there are certain rules and regulations when it comes to the observation of Vas, as Lord Buddha has mentioned. So, what are these rules and regulations that the bhikkhu, the Mahasanghas have to actually go through when considering about the observing of the rain retreat?
As we know, there's a link to any great mission. Now, there are some religions in the world where the leader of the religion or the creator of the religion has said, you will not go to another god but to me. You will not worship another god but me alone. You will not seek the refuge of another god, but me only. You will not follow anyone else other than me. If you do, I punish you, I vanquish you, because I am a jealous God and I am an angry God. Right? Now, if you take that basis, the mission of such faith or religion or philosophy or science or whatever we say will move along the lines of that, of fear, of jealousy, of hate, of anger, suspicion. Then, of course, even within that, there is room for kindness too, and sharing and all that. But the basis is what I said before. Now, the Buddha's sole aim was Nibbana, annihilating greed, annihilating anger, annihilating fear, annihilating delusion, annihilating insecurity, then breaking the journey of samsara, life and death, in this very life itself. He uses the word here and now. So he says that the fruits of his teachings can be reaped in a short time. And this has been vouched by the elder Venerable Sariputta Arahanta Thero too, in many of his teachings, that arahantship, enlightenment, Nibbana, the quenching of the fires of greed, hate, delusion, etc., that makes so much of a problem and bring permanent peace, happiness, and joy and bliss, can be achieved in this life itself. Now, on this basis only, the order is set up, the monk's order. And on this basis also is the order of the laity set up. So the monks are expected to be very careful of their vinaya, and they are expected to be very rigorous in their practice of learning and meditation. Of course, again, as I said, if I were to elaborate on this practice, we will not see an end to our program today.
Yes.
So, the essence of the law laid out by the Buddha is practice. Practice of Vinaya, practice of Dhamma. So, leading to Nibbana. So, even when the monk is busy, that is in inverted commas, a monk has to have a life of simplicity, without much burdens. He actually gives the example of a bird flying with the freedom of its wings. So if a monk says that he is burdened, then he doesn't fit the picture. And if a monk says that he is busy, again he doesn't fit the picture. You see, the busyness, if he says, yes, I'm very busy with my sila, and I'm very busy with my learning and my meditation, and I am giving my life to achieve arahanthood, well and good, he is busy, and that can be accepted. So anyhow, if this is the criteria, where day to day, the monk, even when he is not confined to the temple or his meditation area or whatever it is because of this vasana, he is expected and he is instructed to have a full life of practice. Gate etite nisinne sutte jagarite sampajanakari hoti. When he is standing, sitting, walking, lying down, then when he is eating, then when he goes for his ablutions, then bathing, washing, all his duties are with mindfulness, awareness, and complete focus on one-pointedness, that is the English word, on Nibbana. So now when it comes to the retreat, he has 3 months plus that 1 month of chivara. So that would be the offerings of the robes, Katina robes. So that would be 4 months. He has 4 months to entirely devote himself to this supreme object of enlightenment, Nibbana, that the Buddha emphasized on. And that is why he came down to this world. And that is his mission, to, in this journey in samsara, by achieving Nibbana. So he has all those 4 months. So let's say 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. This is, of course, there are many other criteria also involving that, but in the basis, there are 120 days. Out of 365 days, well, he is expected to be 365 days vigilant on the path to Nibbana, but this 120 days is like an added boost, is like an added punch, where the rain itself keeps him inside, where we will go through his sila, where he will strive on with his meditation, learning, and his mental absorptions, and again to eradicate the 10, eradicate the 5 hindrances and the 10 fetters, so that ultimately, if the goal of Nibbana is achieved, so whether it is achieved or not, again, remains on the skills of the practitioner and also of his many other factors. But nevertheless, this is the theory. So if you use one or two words, the most important part of the Katina season is for not only the monks but also the lay people to go for Nibbana in this life itself.
Certainly, yes, Venerable Sir. Actually, when considering about the other devotees as well, now we were talking about the aspect when it comes to the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and at the same time we have the upasakas and the upasikas, the lay devotees when we consider. I would like to ask you, Professor, so as Venerable Sir mentioned, now there are certain rules and regulations that has been put forward by the Lord Buddha when it comes to the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis. So talking about the upasakas and upasikas, the lay devotees, what are the kind of devotions that they are supposed to take up in this rain retreat?
When monks are confined to the temple for a period of 3 months, they have to be looked after by the laymen, both men and women, because they are not going on alms begging food. So it's up to the laymen of the village, laymen and lay women, to look after them, their needs, all that. Of course, this brings the laymen of the laity and the monks together. During the other months, they can be distant, but here 3 months are given specifically to bring them together. So laymen will visit the temple more often, especially in the evenings, and take part in the offerings, Buddha pujas and all that. And the monks will deliver sermons. By the way, all monks are not entitled to observe rain retreat. Only those monks have attained upasampada, not the samaneras, not the novices. They are the ones who are now more mature, who can perform this.
In fact, sir, what is the reason behind this concept of it? It's only the upasampada monks.
Well, once his age, to be eligible for upasampada, a monk has to be 20 years of age. Yeah. So you are not just a youngster, but somebody who is fairly comparatively mature. And during that time, to pass the upasampada, he has to perform certain things. He must be knowledgeable, he must be able to recite so many stanzas from the Tripitaka and from Dhammapada and from various texts. So he's a fairly qualified person. So such a qualified person is the best one to take part in the upasampada. Now, of course, a novice may be as good as a upasampada monk, but very rarely it's possible.
Yes, sir. And in fact, now talking about the devotees, it's another aspect of it. But in considering the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, actually, it's the time that they keep meditating and they have their spiritual gainment as well. And during the Lord Buddha's period, they were meditating, engaged in meditation when it comes to samatha and vipassana. So talking about this aspect of it, how do you think the spiritual gainment can be really established during this particular period of time?
Now there were 7 monks who were going out in search of a place to spend their vasana. Now you must remember this story comes not from the present day, but from many hundreds of years ago. So the system was different. Now actually my preceptor, who passed away at the age of 107 years old, now he was a brilliant scholar and a monk. I have not seen the likes of him. At the age of 107 too, he could memorize. He knew by heart the whole of Tripitaka. So when we would discuss with him and we had a problem, he would teach us. And then he would also tell, you go to the library and open that particular that particular shelf and count book from so and so, and then you will find a book by the name of this, bring it to me. Then we will bring it to him. Then he will say, turn to page so and so and read para so and so, because he was also not able to see at that time. So then when we read, there he had exactly what he had said. So now he would say, I am 365 days vasana in my temple, because you see, the present day system is, unlike a monk like me who prefers the ancient tradition of the wandering monk. The others would be by and large sticking to their own temples or meditation centers or aranyas. So virtually most of the time they will be, whether they are observing Vassa or not, sticking to their own place. So anyhow, in the formative days, it was different. It was more of a, mission of going about and, meditating and teaching and all that. Anyhow, so these 7 monks were looking for a place to set up their Vassana season. So they asked the people of the area, who can help us? So they said, why not? You go and speak to that person who is very rich. So they went there, but of course they got chased out, saying, no, we will not, we are not inclined towards building new kutis and all that. So on their way back, they met a not so affluent lady. So she asked, I heard that you went to such and such a person's place to see whether you could get some kutis done. Were you successful? Then they said no. They chased us. So then this lady asked, is it only for a rich person to be able to do this? They said, no, anybody can do. Then can I take you on? They said, yes. So she got her friends around, built them 7 kutis, and that is where they took up their Vassana. Then these monks were practicing ardently. Now, samatha is the controlling of the senses, then controlling of not allowing the infringing emotions to take over. It's a case of like burning, burning the kilesas. But nevertheless, and that leads to jhana, absorptions. Vipassana means going through the 3 realities of life, that is temporariness, impermanence, then unsatisfaction, and the non-self. So now they were doing this. And in the meantime, the lady came and asked them also, now is it only the monks that can do this? Then they said, no, even you can do. Then can you give me a teaching? Said, yes, we will give you a teaching every evening. So she would come to them, and every evening she would learn from them a very practical method of practicing. And she devoted herself not only to looking after them, but also looking after her. So much so that in a few months, or sorry, I wouldn't say few months, what is said in the text is in a short time, she attained the stage of a non-returner, that is anagami. Through meditation and vigilance, as well as her saddha, and taking care of the monks. Now, she was actually able to, inspire these monks through kindness, then through devotion, and taking care of them and making them absolutely comfortable, that at the end of the retreat, those 7 had become arahants. So you see, it's not only the monks, but also the laity who all got through the hurdle of samsara. The monks were arahants, and the lay lady became an anagami with just one hurdle to clear. So it's so clear. This is an absolutely perfectly clearly set down mission, where if somebody sets himself up, a man or a woman, a monk or a nun, Nibbana is the taking in this life itself. And Vassana is, I suppose, like a blessed few months to achieve this goal.
True enough, Venerable Sir. Actually, when we consider the rainy retreat, actually, it's the time when the people, as well as the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, all of them, they actually start practicing the great qualities, the great teachings of the Lord Buddha, the core teachings of the Lord Buddha. When we consider the dana, sila, bhavana, and when it comes to the Noble Eightfold Path, the great teaching of the Lord Buddha. So, actually, I was going through this book. I would like to take a close look at it as well. Professor, you've written this book on the monk and the peasant. And actually, it's a study of the traditional Sinhalese village. And let's take a close look at this. So in the traditional Sinhalese village, this culture and the tradition, the Buddhist culture and tradition, it started being practiced by all the people. So asking you, sir, now the 7th chapter of this book indicates the rituals of the rain retreat. Would like to ask you to brief on this particular chapter and the significance of this book that you've written.
As you mentioned, rain retreat comes to an end after 3 months, and then a 4th month called the Chivara month comes into being, where a robe is offered to the monks as a community, not to an individual monk, but to the entire community of monks. And to prepare this special Chivara called the Katina Chivara, the entire village gets together. That's the most important element of this ritual, that the entire village gets together to perform this ceremony called offering of the Katina Chivara. So to begin with, now to make a cloth, one thing is this Katina Chivara cannot be bought in a shop. Any other Chivara, a robe, can be bought in a shop. This is the only Chivara that can be bought. It has to be made by the villagers, by the entire community. So they first buy the white cloth necessary for the Chivara, and to buy that, money is collected from every individual, every household. Every individual will give some part of it. We have an old word called sammadang karana. So it's a very positive kind of thing. Money is collected from each and every person so that you share the merit. And then you buy the cloth, and on a very nice early morning, the cloth is taken to the temple. And you call this a Katina Perahara. Early in the morning, before the crack of dawn, you take it to the temple with many other things that the temple needs. So this taken into the temple, and then it's offered to the monks. Monks get together, cut the white cloth so that it can be sewn into a Chivara, and again in most temples done by the monks themselves. And they dye it. Of course, they say they cut it and sew it to resemble a paddy field. So it's not one thing, when you cut a cloth, it becomes economically valueless, so that it can't be sold again. It's cut in such a way. On the other hand, it resembles what you call a paddy field, which is what you call a field where you sow paddy and we get paddy back. So it's like, Sri Lankan thing, the temple is another kind of paddy field, but we don't sow paddy, but merit. So we call it pin keta. The other one is the normal keta. This is the pin keta, where merit is sown for them to reap later. So that is done. So, and it's dyed, it's then dried, kind of put in the sun, and at the end of the day, it's offered to the entire community of monks, not to one individual monk. And those monks discuss among themselves who should be given this Chivara to be worn. So on some basis of rotation or whatever it is, one individual monk is chosen to receive the Katina Chivara. Then he wears the Katina Chivara and delivers a sermon called the Katinana Santa Deshana. He said how important it is, how good it is to offer a Chivara of this kind, and what kind of merit will it bring. It's called Anisanta. Now, if you offer a Katina Chivara, it will bring this and this and this, like that. So he delivers a sermon, and that brings the entire thing in. But so they say in certain villages in the south, for example, you see many other things happen along with that. Sometimes if the Chivara is brought early morning, at the temple they start chanting Pirit. so that as the perahara or procession enter the temple, you hear the sounds of blessings. The Satpirit or Pirit can be heard. So we have wonderful, so there's a wonderful Sinhala idiom called as you enter the temple, ඇති වෙන්නේ මේ දහසක් බුදුන් බුදු වෙන පාන්දර කියලා. So it's a time when 1,000 Buddhas come into being. So imagine you know how wonderful it is to have one Buddha. Now the feeling you get, the emotion you get is like the morning when the pleasure or the serene joy that you get is equivalent to that you'll get by seeing or listening to 1,000 Buddhas. So it's a wonderful event. So not only young children, adolescents, old, all get together, men and women, to take this chivara, and so they really enjoy it.
Yes, sir. Actually, now when we consider the Katina Chivara Puja, it takes a long process, and it's one of the greatest meritorious activities that a person can actually do in the whole lifetime of a being. When we consider the Katina Chivara Puja, that's how it's considered, and it says Sakpiti Rajya Sampat Labaganime Anisansa can be obtained. So that is how it's mentioned in Sinhala. So it's that much of a great, valuable, great meritorious activity that a person can accomplish. Because in this society, now when we consider the society is running towards materialistic gainment rather than for the spiritual attainment. It's most of the time materialistic gainment that people run towards. So starting off from the small kid to the very eldest person. So in a society like this, I think it's high time that we should actually build up these wonderful qualities and the traditions and customs of Buddhism that needs to be taken into effect and that needs to be practiced. So I would like to ask you, Venerable Sir, what are the merits that a person can gain in carrying out this kind of a great meritorious activity like the Katina Chivara Puja itself?
So, little lady, you have already answered your own question. So,
Yes.
however, I will also add a few words to what you have said. Now, in this world, according to the Buddha's vision, unsurpassed vision, uncompared territories of his brilliance, he saw that there are two sides to wholesome work, wholesome energies, that is kusala kamma, punya kamma. One is mundane, material. The other is supramundane. So what is mundane and what is worldly is called laukika. What is supramundane is called lokottara, leading to Nibbana, enlightenment, emancipation. Now, this Katina is virtually the biggest of the lot that one can do for laukika punya, for mundane development. The word Katina itself means very strong, unshakable, powerful, not easily perished. So much so, it is compared to the earth. One fine day, this earth will also come to its end. This ocean will come to its end. The Mount Mahameru, which is supposed to be the biggest of mountains, will see an end one day. And more than that, even the yawn. A yawn is explained this way. Someone makes a box 7 miles in height, 7 miles in length, 7 miles in breadth, and 7 miles in width. And then this box is filled to the brim with tiny, tiny, tiny seeds of mustard. So you can very well imagine how long it will take to make this box or the container, as well as to fill the box with such small particles of mustard. Then after that, one person will come and take one seed of mustard out of it. And then after another 100 years, another seed of mustard is taken out. After another 100, another seed is taken off. Like that, every 100 years, one seed of mustard is taken off. And this box will come to an end one day. Now that is, it is said the cupper is even longer than that. So that will also end. But it is said that the merit accrued through this powerful, strong katina will not end so quickly, but it will last with a person for an extremely long time in his samsaric journey, giving him lots and lots of merit, wealth, prosperity, keeping him from harm like that on the journey of his samsara. The highest of it is all, of course, to be a world-ruling monarch. Now this world-ruling monarch is unlike what the Britishers nearly accomplished. Now they were called the regime where the sun doesn't set. However, they conquered most part of the world through war and cunning. Now whatever that the Portuguese conquered was also through war and cunning. What the Spanish acquired was also like that, the Dutch. So whoever went into war, acquiring land and other regimes under them went through war and cunning. Now the world ruling monarch is not like that. He is handed over on a platter all the countries. You know, when he walks into a country, his merit is so great that the other king or the minister, say he walks here, the president will go up to him and say, "Welcome, sir. Thank you very much for coming to our country. Take over this country and rule." It's like that. So he will be the king of this whole world without shedding a drop of blood or cunning. It's handed over to him on a platter. So you are seeing in front of you a monk who you are talking with, who has given himself 5 katinas. I myself have done 5 katinas even in my role as a monk. Now you remember I was talking to you about my preceptor. Now I have offered him 3 katinas. So now I am also in line to be a world ruling monarch. So like that, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are in line to be world ruling monarchs over so many hundreds of years of doing katina. So you think how long it will take for, because everyone can't be a world ruling monarch. It will go, it will take thousands of years to do that. So what the Buddha says is, there is something greater than this too. What is that? There's something even far greater than this. Because why? Even the world ruling monarch, even though he reaches such heights, will and can end up in hell when his time has run out, when his merit has run out. He can end up as an animal. So the best, he says, then for us to do is there's a stronger thing to do. That is, here the Buddha is born, his dispensation is clearly there, the Kalyana Mitras are there, the practice is openly seen. So that go not only for katina, but even for the greater one of sila, samadhi, panya, culminating in become enlightened in this life itself, here and now. Nobody can take that away from you if that is done. You are not once, but doubly assured, 100 times assured that you will not end up in a woeful state, but that you have reached the end of the destination. So what more can we ask from the Buddha?
Exactly, Venerable Sir. Transient are all component things. Strive on with diligence. That's what Lord Buddha has told us. So with that, we'll be concluding our program on Beyond the Vision today. And my most veneration goes to Venerable Mahanuwara Medankara Thera. And thank you very much, Professor J.B. Disanayake, for joining us today as well. And of course, would like to remind you our email address before winding up the program. It's beyondthevision.tv@gmail.com. You can send in your queries and your suggestions to us, and definitely we will be taking them forward in our future discussions as well. And Dhammo have rakkati dhammachari. One who lives by the Dhamma is always protected by the Dhamma. May the Noble Triple Gem bless you. Samma Sambuddha Saranaya.